today's video, I'm going to be trying out Godot for the first time. I've literally never opened the editor before until I started recording this video. And it's going to be a bit of a strange format. So I was reading through a tutorial on the other screen. And I did record the whole process of me like reading what I was doing and kind of explaining every little line of code. And that recording was about an hour long. So what I've done is I've trimmed out kind of the insubstantial bits, and I've done a lot of time lapses of certain periods through that, and I've kind of kept in relevant kind of like comments on what I think about the engine like as I go along. And you see that as I come up against like new concepts, I'll probably keep that in at the first point, but then once, you know, I'm adding a node to the scene, I'm just skipping through some of that because I don't think an hour and a half of this would be very good entertainment. And if you just want to hear my thoughts on Godot and what I thought of my experience, there's a timestamp on screen now. If you click through to that time, which is going to be at the end of the video, I'm going to be going through kind of what I thought about the experience. But onto the kind of engine section of where I'm actually like building the little game project on the tutorial. Okay, so here's a little kind of image of what we're going to be creating. So this tutorial guide will guide you through making your first Godot project. You're going to learn how the Godot editor works, how to structure a project, and how to build a 2D game. Project is an introduction to Godot. If you're new to programming entirely, blah, 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 blah. Dodge the creeps. Okay, let's go. So I'm just going to pop that over here. So project setup, I've downloaded the assets. So now we're going to go and create a new project. So I guess that's this button here. Okay, so it kind of works like Unity. You right click, move around. This is literally the first time I have seen inside the editor. What have we got? Nodes, scenes, file system, inspector, node. Okay, so the game is designed for portrait mode, so we need to adjust the size of the game window. There we go. I assume this is our game window, then the blue bit. So organizing the project. In this project, we're going to make 3 independent scenes, player, mob, and HUD, which we will combine into the game's main scene. In a larger project, it might be useful to create folders to hold the various scenes and their scripts, but for this relatively small game, you can save your scenes and scripts in the project's root folder, identified by res. You can see your project folders in the file system dock in the lower left corner. Player scene. The first scene will define the player object. One of the benefits of creating a separate player scene is that we can test it separately, even before we've created the other parts. To begin, we need to choose a root node for the player object. As a general rule, a scene's root node should reflect the object's desired functionality. Okay, area 2D. With the area 2D, we can detect objects that overlap or run into the player. Change the node's name to player by double-clicking it. Now that we've set the scene's root node, we can add additional nodes to give it more functionality. Before we add any children to the player, we want to make sure we don't accidentally move or resize them by clicking on them. Select the node and click the icon to the right of the lock. Its tooltip says make sure the object's children are not selectable. And then we will rename this to player. Okay, so now we're going to add some actual graphics to this. So select the player, add an animated sprite node. On the left is a list of the animations. Player, grey up. Sheet, what have I done? And so then in walk, we're going to do walk and drag them in. Finally, add a collision shape 2D is a child of the player, and the shape is going to be a new capsule shape 2D. Moving the player. Now we need to add some functionality that we can't get from a built-in node, so we'll add a script to the player. Click on the player node and click the attach script button. In the script window, you can leave the default settings alone, just click create. Start by declaring the member name, member variables this object will need. Okay, so in Godot, you can use C# or GD script. Obviously, I'm more comfortable in C# because that's what Unity uses, but to fully embrace this, I'm going to try some GD script. And it is just a case of copy and paste, and like they've got it written out here. But you know, I'm not going to copy and paste it. Let's type it. Let's see if we can get into the flow of typing some GD script. So declare the member variables here. So we're going to do export var speed equals 400. You don't need semicolons at the end of a line in GD script, so that's going to be confusing. I think if you put them in, it doesn't matter, but, you know, fully embracing it. But I carried on reading, that's exactly what it does. So using the export keyword on the first variable, speed, allows us to see its value in the inspector. This can be handy for values that you want to be able to adjust, like a node's built-in properties. Click on the player node, and you'll see the property now appears in the script variables section. Oh yeah, so it does. And it does note here, so if you're using C#, you need to rebuild the project assemblies whenever you want to see new export variables or signals. And that's another key difference I know about Godot and GD script, is it doesn't need to compile. Like, you saw then that I went from the script straight back over into the scene, and it's all in the same kind of, you know, we're editing the script within the editor. It's not in like a Visual Studio or anything. So I could rename this to gotta go fast, you know, speed variable. And then we could go back over to our player, and you can see that it's renamed instantly there. I could rename that back to speed, and it's just done. There's no, like, you don't have to click back in and wait for it to reload the project, which is good. Okay, so then we've got func ready, which from reading this seems like, you know, this is equivalent to Unity's start function, called when the node enters the scene tree for the first time. Now we can use the process function to define what the player will do. Process is called every frames. This is like the update function, and it's got the delta time being passed in, so we can do stuff every frame. So we're going to use this to update elements of our game, blah, 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 check for input, move in the given direction, play the appropriate animation. Animated sprite.play. Okay, so that got a reference to the animated sprite with this little dollar sign apparently. I guess that finds it on the player. So here, this is equivalent. Oh, I've spelled sprite wrong. This is equivalent of type in .getComponent, it seems. Click play scene or F6 to confirm that we can move our creature around. There we go, we're moving. And we're clamped. We're clamped from the center of our position though. It might be good to have a bit of an offset to that. So choose animations. Now that the player can move, we need to change which animation the animated sprite is playing based on its direction. We've got the walk animation, which shows the player walking to the right. This animation should be flipped horizontally using the flip H property for left move. F6. Up, flipping the V. And it's walking. If you go diagonally, you just do the walking. So each time an enemy hits the player, the signal is going to be emitted. We need to disable the player's collision so that we don't trigger the hit signal more than once. Okay, so that's our player done, it seems. We're on to the enemy scene. Mobs will spawn randomly at the edges of the screen, choose a random direction and move in a straight line. We'll create a mob scene, which we can then instance to create any number of independent mobs in the game. Let's see if that works. It says here physics body 2D, collision, layer and mask. There's a collision object 2D, collision, layer and masks. That must be it. Set up the animated sprite like we did for the player. Okay, it doesn't say what that does, but I'm presuming this is going to add it to a queue to free up the resource once the screen's been exited. I assume that's what it means. So this completes the mob scene. So now it's time to bring it all together. We're going to create a new scene. I'm going to create a new scene. New scene. Which we are going to add. We're going to add a node. We're just going to add a node. The main node will be spawning new mobs, and we want them to appear at a random location on the edge of the screen. Add a path 2D node named mob path. So node path 2D. So we're going to add a point, and we're going to click the corners of the screen. The one that runs automatically when the game launches. Press the play button and select our main.tscn. Invalid. Okay. Something didn't work. Function ready. Add child mob. Mob.instance. Did I? So I've set our mob. So there's an issue with our animated sprite.animation. So let's go back up. Let's have a look. Mobs.size. Need some brackets. Okay, will this work now then? Nope. Invalid set index with value type vector2. Okay, so this is the code that they want to use, so... okay, I've missed an A. Okay, so will this work? If we stop and hit play... No. I've done it there as well. Line of velocity. Like, what's wrong with me? Try again. Okay. And we're dead. So our new function isn't getting called. I don't know if it should. We'll go back to that. You should be able to move the player around, see mobs spawning, and see the player disappears when hit by a mob. I mean, that happened. I guess... Oh, so we're gonna make a HUD that actually allows you to hit start, and that'll start the new game. So we need to just get rid of this. The final piece our game needs is a UI, an interface to display things like score, game over, restart, create a new scene. Straight onto it. Okay, so let's go back to scene, new scene, and we're gonna call and add a canvas layer node. Canvas layer. I should probably set that to 0 by default. So get ready. Here they come. Ah. Game over. With a score of 10. Dodge the creeps. The button comes up. Hit start. And there we go. We've started again. Oh, game over. I feel like the spawning's wrong. They should spawn at the edge and move inwards. I feel like I did this. Like I did the path wrong. I might need to revisit that. Also in HUD 2D. Let's set this to 0. Let's center it. Back in main, let's go to our mob path. Let's just make this again. So we're going to make a path 2D node, which we're going to name mob path. We're going to snap to the grid. We're going to add a point, and we're going to click up here, and we're going to click here. Then we're going to click here. And then we're going to click here. And then we're going to close our curve. And then we're going to add a child node, and it's going to be a path follow, which we're going to name mob path follow. I believe that's what we called it. We must have called this mob spawn location. Something's really wrong here. I don't know what I've done. Get rid of that again. Spawning mobs, the main node. Add a path 2D node named mob path. Path 2D. Mob path. Oh, okay, so then we're going to add a point. We're going to click up here. I'm going to click here. Click here. Click here. And then hit close path. Close curve. And then we're going to add add child node. Path follow 2D. And this is going to be called mob spawn location. So now if we hit play. Okay, that's so much better. They would, I still suck at the game. Dodge the creeps. Yeah, there we go. They're not just spawning randomly in the middle of the bloody scene. So we can go around, we can dodge the creeps, then we get hit, and it's game over. Okay, so we're nearly done. We've now completed all the functionality of the game. We just need to add a background to add a bit more juice to the game. Ooh, that's very loud. Oh, it immediately died. Let's try again. Start. Gosh darn it. Dodge the creeps. There we go. I'm not very good at the game, but we made a game in Godot. Okay, thanks for joining me at the end of the video. Let's be honest, did you just skip here from the beginning of the video? I don't blame you. I personally like watching these types of videos that I've made, but I know some people would just want to hear kind of a developer's thoughts on a different engine. So my first thoughts are I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time with Godot. Will I swap? No, I'm not going to swap. You know, maybe over time I'll start to dabble in it a bit more, but just from that initial kind of impression, like, it's great. If you're a first-time developer and you're choosing between engines, honestly, if you just want to make a little 2D game, what I've read about Godot and what I've just experienced is the scripting language is quite easy. I mean, C# isn't massively hard by any means, but with Unity in particular, there's lots of, like, you know, get components, you've got to drag stuff in the inspector. What I quite liked about Godot was that you could just put the $, type in the kind of component, and it'd find it in your node tree scene outline. So yeah, GD script. It's kind of like JavaScript. I quite enjoyed writing it. It was definitely a lot cleaner and easier to read than C#. Some other things I quite liked is I did like the different, you know, you've got different scenes and you have a main scene which you bring those other scenes into. And that's not quite like Unity where you've got a scene and then you can like additively bring scenes into it. I suppose, like, you know, the functionality is quite similar, but the way I kind of thought about this when I was doing it was that you'd make a scene and you'd build up the player and then you'd save that scene, and that's essentially like a prefab in Unity, so then you could drag that scene / prefab into the main scene. See, the terminology is a lot confusing. They've got nodes, they've got scenes, but you put nodes in scenes, and yeah, I feel like I could like that kind of way of working if that's what I was used to. If I was going into it the first time, like, it did make sense what I was doing. Like, you know, I didn't think it was convoluted or anything. But I do quite like Unity's way of doing it. So you've got your actual scene, which is the world within where you put objects. So you've got your game objects instead of your node trees. And then you save out individual game objects as a prefab, and then you can put them into scenes, you can reference them, you can drag them into the inspector, etc. So that aspect, you know, I can see why Godot's good. I prefer Unity. I don't think one's worse than the other necessarily. If you disagree, let me know in the comments below. And if you hit the dislike button, no one else will see it, but I will, so I will know that you don't agree with my opinions. One of my other big likes, but it's also slightly a dislike as well, is that I really enjoy just being able to, you know, I'm within Godot, I'm typing a script, I can flick back between the scenes, like I don't have to have an IDE open, I don't need Visual Studio or Code or Rider or anything open. You know, it's all just there, you could type it, it's quick compiling. There's like a split second when you change the name of something for the engine to kind of reference it. Whereas with Unity, you make a script, you've got to double click the script, you've got to open it in Visual Studio, then you've got to do your changes, click back into the engine, it's got to reload that assembly. So that does sort of, you know, start slowing you down slightly there. But what I didn't like about coding within the engine, it didn't seem to have lots of autocomplete, which, you know, could be a blessing, could be a curse. I guess it forces you to actually go online and like look up what a function's doing. But I know within Unity and Visual Studio that if I type, you know, get component transform dot translate, or one of the other functions like move position, a little autocomplete box will pop up and it has a summary of what that function does and what exactly it's requiring. I didn't find that was happening within Godot. Like, it autocomplete what I wanted to write, but I couldn't find out what the functions were doing. I'd have had to go onto Google and actually like search and look that up. But, you know, a bit of research isn't that bad, and maybe that'll actually make those functions stick in your head. Because with Unity, I rely on autocomplete quite a lot. So you'll do a function, you're like, okay, this is the right function, because you'll read the tooltip, you'll do it, but then, you know, I'm not absorbing it. Whereas if I had to go external, open up the page, and I had the full page of like reading it, and there's probably a bit more information than you could put in a tooltip, maybe that'd sink in, maybe it'd make me a better coder, I don't know. But yeah, that's just some thoughts on my experience with Godot. You know, coming from someone who uses Unity pretty much every day. If you've used both engines before, or you just use one, let me know which one that is in the comments below. It'd be quite interesting to see what people are actually using. And if you want to see any more kind of Godot videos and me exploring it any deeper, again, let me know below. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!